Roger Smith, Director of Justice.
My congratulations to the young lawyers too. I've participated in various events over the year, and I think they've made a real contribution to debate. My contribution to the book comes from my personal experience. It is very personal. First of all, it is personal. It's not the view of Justice or any other organisation. And secondly, it comes out of my own experience. In 1973, I walked out of Allen & Overy, which is a firm like this, and went into law centres, and I've had various jobs since where I have been part of the process of using the law to protect the poor and the powerless. And I feel very powerfully that that is worth doing, and it's worth lawyers being engaged in that. And there's a wonderful benefit for poor and powerless people from that. And the areas of law that very clearly affect the poor are those which are generally known in this jurisdiction as social welfare law, which is what Lord Bach has called them. And that's right according to our terminology. If we were in the United States or North America, we call them poverty law. And they would be benefits and employment law and housing, debt, consumer. And I think we should change the name to poverty law. If you look at the stats, it's a bit difficult to make out, but we spend somewhere between 100 million and 150 million on them, on a series of providers, 1/3 of whom are NGOs. I would build on the experience of the United States in the 1970s, our experience at law centres, just a little after that, what's happening currently in Ontario, and I would put it into, I would take that money from some of its existing recipients, and I would put it in a pot. And I would divvy that pot out to NGO organisations over the country, which I would see as modelled roughly on Justice's size. Justice costs 1/3 of a million. So I would see if I got 100 million, I would make 301 organisations. The one I'd appoint first, which would be a national poverty law centre. That would set out a national poverty strategy, the objective of which was going to be debated as widely as possible. The point would be, how do you use law to attack poverty, social exclusion, constitutional inclusion? And having worked out the strategy, I would then, in the modern way, go through some sort of bidding process. You'd have to be an NGO, you'd have to be part of one of the 3 networks of NGOs in the advice or legal field, and you would bid against the strategy to deliver in 300 units over the country poverty law services to local people. And I would, if we got 300, we'd have roughly one per every 2 constituencies. I would have MPs on their boards, I would have councillors on their board, and I would transform the delivery of poverty law in that way.
Thank you very much indeed, Roger. Steve Hynes, Director of Justice.
Okay, well, happy birthday, everybody. Well, first of all, before they invent insurance, actually there's 59% of the population covered by before they invent insurance. They buy it through their house insurance, they buy it through their car insurance, except they don't know it. A bit of a con going on in this country. They pay about £20–30 for it. This is all information from a DCA report that was published 5 years ago. We, I think, could have a triage service that links up with the insurance industry, that could jointly fund it and refer on appropriately. A triage service would also do legal education through the internet. It would also do telephone advice lines. And I think we have the existing resources to do that. You could do that through what's already spent in the NFP sector. You could join it with private sector money. You would have to sort out the niceties of regulation, but it could be done. We spend a lot in this country. There's something like 200 million at least goes into the voluntary sector that's not legal aid money. Another 30 million of legal aid money goes into a telephone advice line. And we have a number of telephone advice lines duplicated across government. They did do an internal review of them not so many months back. So, triage service, and the big point is free to everyone. Free to everyone. The problem with legal aid is it excludes something like 70% of the population. Funding ideas. Henry's come up with some funding ideas, some of them pinched from our book indeed.
Point scoring.
Sorry. Does that mean I get a point? But anyway, and I agree with much of it. However, it's small potatoes really in terms of the Treasury. I reckon back of a packet of smokes, about 200–300 million that Henry would raise. And if he didn't get into office, I anticipate that Willie Back would nick the ideas, because that's how things go in politics these days. Another point scoring, very sorry. But be that that money could be just taken by the Treasury or taken off the funding for legal aid. I think it would have to be secured. I prefer the idea of an arm's length organisation. I know it's a bit old hat, it used to be called something like Legal Services Commission or Legal Aid Board, but I think you could put it as a charity sector, Board of Trustees, and they would have a duty to look after the fund.
Finally, point, just hit an ad for no feeding, no wind. So I'm afraid we have to call it that. Thank you very much indeed.
Final point, value what you have.
Good, thank you very much.
Value what you have. Good system.
Thank you very much indeed. Laura James next.
Okay, well mine's a bit of a cheat really, because I do believe there should be more money in you, and you must do that. And so what my contribution is about is saying, look, we need to step back and think in a joined up way, as June was saying. It fits in with the polluter pays point, and I think it fits in with general good governance and best practice. Lawyers should not always be necessary to ensure access to justice. Lawyers generally do one of three things. They're either acting as an important procedural safeguard in criminal context, or where someone's about to lose their home, or they are there to stretch and develop the law through our system of precedent and jurisprudence, or unfortunately they're often required to enforce the law. And just like Lord Bach says, keeping people out of court and making sure that decisions made by agency of government are good decisions in the first place, decisions that respect and protect people's rights in the first place. It seems to me, as a campaigning lawyer, that I'm constantly dealing with intransigence against basically enforcing people's rights that they're entitled to. At the Howard League where I work, I'm constantly representing children who have nowhere to live and having to challenge social services departments to provide them with housing and accommodation support under the Children Act, when in fact under our excellent law as we have it, no child should ever be without a safe and suitable home. What a waste of time and money. We really need to make sure that the agencies that are responsible for making decisions don't have their default position as no, appeal that decision, but actually create a culture of respect.
Your daughter's just pointed out that you've come up to your 2 minutes. Finally, and not least, Paul Mandel, QC, Chair of the Criminal Bar Association.
Well, I am a criminal defence lawyer, so I see things from the perspective of a criminal defence lawyer, the best one in the world, and the greatest defence in the world. People do end up in court. Lord Bach gave the figure of 143,000 cases going in the Crown Court in 2008. And people in court require representation. People charged with serious offences require representation. And the proper funding of civil and criminal rights is fundamental to the rule of law and underpins our democratic society. It's no good giving people rights if they lack the means to enforce them. And in a government that creates something like 3,000 new offences, I'm sorry if this is point scoring, half of which are imprisonable, it's no good complaining that the cost of defending and prosecuting people goes up inexorably. If you consume a lot and chuck your rubbish out, there's no good complaining that the cost of carting it away goes up. And that, I'm afraid, is what the government's done. I don't accept as a premise that, in fact, public expenditure has to be cut. I do think it has to be rebalanced. Justice Select Committee recently published a report which seems to have fallen slightly dead in the press, called Cutting the Cost of Crime. And we could spend less on prisons. We're currently heading towards 96,000 in prison. It was something like 65,000 if this government came into power. And each prison case costs 41,000. It costs £100,000 a bill. So we could take some of that money. The Select Committee said that this prison policy preempts some of the money that should be going into the criminal justice system. So I think that there should be money spent on criminal legal aid. I think there should be money spent on lawyers who do end up in court, and they deserve proper representation when they are.